I thought my mom just didn't like my girlfriend, but then I overheard her say, "He'll never see it coming." She had a plan, and it was already in motion, to destroy us. I always knew my mother was a complicated woman. She had her opinions, her rules, her version of how life was supposed to go, and God help anyone who stepped outside that vision. Growing up, I figured it was just the way she showed love. Controlling, yes, but still love. She cooked, she helped with school, she was there when I was sick. And for a long time, that was enough for me to justify everything else. The comments about my clothes, the guilt-tripping if I didn't call, the passive-aggressive remarks about my friends. But nothing prepared me for what she tried to do once I fell in love. My girlfriend, Emily, is everything I ever hoped for in a partner. She's smart, patient, kind, a little sarcastic, which I love. And most importantly, she makes me better. She challenges me, believes in me, grounds me when I spiral. We met 2 years ago through mutual friends and hit it off instantly. Within months, we moved in together. It felt fast, sure, but it felt right. We were building something real, a partnership, a life. My mom didn't see it that way. From the moment she met Emily, I saw it in her eyes. That tight-lipped smile, the way she scanned her up and down, like she was evaluating a stranger's resume. She said the right things out loud, polite enough not to raise flags at first. But behind every, "she seems nice," was a dozen unspoken digs. Over time, the comments started slipping out. "She's a bit too assertive, don't you think?" Or, "I just hope she doesn't distract you from your goals." Then the classic, "You could do better. You're special. You don't need someone who doesn't come from a family like ours." Emily heard some of it, but I always tried to buffer her. I made excuses for my mom, told her she didn't mean it that way, that she just needed time. Emily, bless her heart, tried. She brought flowers when we visited. She offered to help in the kitchen. She asked my mom questions about her hobbies, her past, her garden, anything to connect. But no matter what she did, it wasn't enough. My mom was cold. Cordial on the surface, but cold underneath. Then it got worse. After about a year of dating, I started noticing things I couldn't explain away. My mom would call me late at night and cry, saying she felt forgotten. She'd randomly bring up my exes in conversation. She even told me once, "You used to smile more before her." And then, out of nowhere, she began hinting that Emily was keeping things from me. "Just be careful," she'd say. "Women know how to play sweet when they want something." It was exhausting, and honestly, a little scary. I began pulling away from my mom emotionally. Not on purpose. It just happened. I was tired of defending someone I loved from someone else I loved. I wanted peace. I wanted them to coexist. But it became increasingly clear that wasn't going to happen. And then, one night, everything changed. It was late. I had just gotten home from work, and I realized I'd left my charger at my parents' house after Sunday dinner. Emily was out with friends, so I figured I'd swing by quickly, grab it, and head back. What I didn't expect was to walk into the house and hear my mom in the kitchen, whispering on the phone. What I heard made my blood run cold. At first, I didn't even register what she was saying. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to my mother's voice, calm, deliberate, just above a whisper. She sounded almost pleased, as if she was talking through some personal strategy, not a betrayal that could shatter my entire life. My gut knew to listen, but my brain couldn't catch up, until I heard the words clearly. "He won't see it coming. That's the beauty of it. She won't know what hit her." My heart started pounding in my ears. I edged closer, careful not to make a sound. She was standing in the kitchen, back turned to the doorway, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was soft but firm. "She thinks I don't know what she's really after. But I've dealt with her kind before. Gold diggers come in with the smile, the act, the soft voice, but it always slips. And when it does, I'll make sure my son isn't the one picking up the pieces." Gold digger? She thought Emily, who pays half the rent, cooks, supports me emotionally, has never once asked me for money, was a gold digger? I wanted to step in right then, to say something, to stop it. But I couldn't. I needed to hear it all. Phase 1 is already working. I've planted enough seeds. He's second-guessing her, I can tell. He hesitates when he talks about her now. That's the first crack. That's when I realized she wasn't just being manipulative. She had a plan. She was actively working to destroy my relationship from the inside out, and she was proud of it. She believed she was saving me, rescuing me from some imagined downfall that only existed in her head. And then came the worst part. I have the photos. I'm going to send them anonymously. He'll believe it came from a friend who cares. And when he sees them, he won't be able to unsee it. That's when it'll all unravel. Photos? What photos? She wasn't just whispering lies anymore. She had evidence, or so she claimed. And she was going to weaponize it. I suddenly felt sick. My own mother was planning a psychological ambush. She wanted me to think Emily was cheating, or lying, or hiding something. And she was going to send fake proof, or maybe taken out of context, just to break us apart. My legs felt like concrete. I stepped back, hit the wall with a soft thud. She paused. I thought I was caught. But then she laughed, quietly, smugly, and kept talking. No, I'm not worried. He trusts me. He always has. That's why it's going to work. In that moment, I saw everything for what it was. My mother wasn't just a difficult woman with strong opinions. She was a manipulator, a saboteur, someone who would rather see her son miserable and single than happy with someone she didn't approve of. I waited until she hung up. Then I quietly left the house, shaking. My charger forgotten, my heart in pieces. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking, how far would she go? And more importantly, what was in those photos? I didn't go home that night. I drove around for hours, aimlessly, like I was trying to outrun my own thoughts. I stopped at a gas station, bought a coffee I didn't drink, sat in the parking lot and stared at the steering wheel like it could offer answers. I felt stuck between two versions of reality. One where my mom was lying, manipulative, yes, but ultimately harmless. And one where she had something, anything, that could actually convince me Emily wasn't who I thought she was. But I knew Emily. Or at least I believed I did. And yet, doubt is a disease. It starts small, but once it takes root, it spreads like wildfire. Even though everything in my gut told me that my mother was bluffing, that this was just another one of her sick games, the possibility, however slim, gnawed at me. What if the photos were real? What if Emily had secrets? What if I was too blind, too in love, too proud to see it? That night, I didn't tell Emily anything. She texted around midnight asking if I was okay. I lied, said I was tired, fell asleep at a friend's place after a late meeting. She sent a heart emoji. I stared at it for a long time, wondering if it was real. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went back to my parents' house. My mom wasn't home. My dad was outside fixing something in the garage, and I told him I forgot something in the kitchen. He didn't ask questions. He never does. I knew her passwords. She never changed them. I opened her laptop, went into her emails, then her cloud drive, and there they were. A folder labeled simply proof. I opened it, expecting, I don't know what, something scandalous, dramatic, undeniable. But what I found was the opposite. 10 blurry photos of Emily, all taken without her knowledge. One of her walking out of her yoga class. Another sitting alone in a coffee shop, smiling at her phone. One where she was hugging a guy, a friend of ours, openly gay, who she's known since college. That was the proof. No dates, no context, no messages. Just snapshots meant to look suspicious if you were already primed to believe the worst. And I knew then. My mother had nothing. No real evidence. Just a warped, paranoid fantasy built on fear and control. She took innocent moments and twisted them into a narrative that fit her agenda. But I couldn't just let it go. Not anymore. I copied the folder to a USB. I wanted Emily to see it for herself. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I needed her to know what we were up against. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about someone actively trying to sabotage our lives. That night, I sat her down. Her eyes widened when I showed her the pictures. At first, confusion. Then shock. Then anger. Not at me, but at the violation. "She followed me?" she asked, voice shaking. "Your mom's been following me?" I nodded. And then I told her everything. The phone call, the words I heard, the plan she had laid out. Emily didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat in silence for a long time. Then she said, "She won't stop. This isn't going away." And I realized she was right. Because this wasn't just one act of sabotage. It was war. We spent the entire night planning. At first, it felt ridiculous, like a scene out of some low-budget thriller. The good girlfriend and her paranoid boyfriend conspiring in a cramped living room, whispering over screenshots and flash drives like we were spies. But the deeper we went, the more serious it became. This wasn't just some emotionally unstable parent overstepping. This was active sabotage, covert, strategic, calculated. We realized something simple but terrifying. If my mom was already willing to fake a cheating scandal, she wouldn't stop there. She would escalate. Maybe anonymous letters to my work, rumors, lies to our friends. What scared me most was how calm she sounded on that call. Like this wasn't new for her. Like she'd done it before. So we made a choice. We weren't going to wait for her to strike again. We were going to get ahead of it. The plan was simple. Confront her, but with evidence. Not just the photos she took, but the recording. I had gone back and checked. My car dash cam had picked up some of the audio through the Bluetooth system while I was sitting in her driveway that night. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to catch the tone, the language, the manipulation. Emily suggested we meet somewhere neutral. Public enough to prevent a scene, but quiet enough to talk. We chose a small cafe we'd gone to once on a rainy Sunday. My mom liked it too, ironically. It felt symbolic, her favorite civilized place to finally show her what she'd done. I sent the text. "Hey Mom, can we grab coffee? Just us. I have something important to talk about." She responded within minutes. "Of course, honey. Just tell me when." We met that Friday afternoon. She was in pearls, lipstick, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, complimented my shirt, asked how Emily was doing, with that same brittle tone she always used. We ordered, sat down. I didn't waste time. "I know what you did," she blinked. "I heard the call, Mom. The one in the kitchen. I was there. I heard everything." Her smile faltered. Just slightly. She looked down at her cup. "I don't know what you mean." I pulled out the USB and laid it on the table. "You created a folder called Proof. You followed Emily, took pictures. You were going to send them anonymously." She didn't touch the drive. She didn't reach for it. She just sat perfectly still. Then she said, "I did it for you." That broke something in me. "For me?" I asked. "Lying, spying, manipulating? That's for me?" "She's not right for you," she snapped suddenly, louder than intended. A few heads turned. "She's got you wrapped around her finger. You don't see it, but she's using you." I stayed calm. I had to. "No, Mom. What I don't see, what I never wanted to see, is how far you're willing to go to get what you want." She stared at me, eyes narrowing. "You'll regret this," she said quietly. "You'll come crawling back. You always do." And then she stood up, straightened her jacket, and walked out, leaving the coffee untouched, and me sitting there, not shocked, not angry, but finally, clear. After that meeting, everything felt eerily still. No more passive-aggressive texts, no cryptic phone calls late at night, no sudden visits or invites to dinner. My mother disappeared from my daily life like she'd flipped a switch. One moment, she was the ever-present force pushing herself into every corner of my world, and the next, silence. At first, the quiet was disorienting. I expected blowback, a guilt trip message, a family group chat explosion, maybe even one of her dramatic monologues about how children forget everything their parents sacrificed. But there was nothing, not a word. And the absence, it didn't bring peace, at least not right away. It brought grief, Real grief. The kind you feel when someone dies. Except the person is still alive, just no longer the version you thought they were. I mourned her. It sounds dramatic, maybe even petty. But when you grow up with someone who defines your emotional compass, letting go of them feels like losing a limb. I'd built my entire sense of safety, approval, even self-worth around her moods. And now, by cutting her out, I was left with this vast emotional emptiness. But that emptiness, painful as it was, eventually gave way to something else. Clarity. Without her voice in my ear, I began to hear my own thoughts more clearly. Without her passive judgment lurking in every decision, I realized how much of my life I had lived trying to avoid conflict, not just with her, but with anyone who reminded me of her. I had been shrinking myself for years, smaller, quieter, more manageable, just to keep people like her calm. But now, I didn't want calm. I wanted truth. And with Emily, I finally had space for that. At first, it was awkward. There was a weird distance between us in the weeks after the confrontation. Not because we doubted each other, but because we were both recovering from a psychological ambush. Trust isn't just about believing someone isn't lying. It's about feeling safe enough to stop scanning the room for threats. But Emily, she stayed. Patient. Present. When I shut down, she didn't take it personally. When I snapped, she didn't escalate. She knew I was bleeding from somewhere deeper, somewhere older. And slowly, something beautiful began to grow. We started taking walks without our phones, cooking together more often, talking, really talking, without distractions. There was no grand moment of healing, no perfect tearful movie scene. Just two people rebuilding something brick by brick, scar by scar. One day, about a month later, Emily handed me her phone and said, "Block her." I stared at the screen. My mom had texted again, just once. A vague message. "Thinking of you. Hope you're okay." I blocked her. No rage, no speech, no drama, just release. It's strange how silence can be louder than screaming. In the weeks that followed, I found myself listening for echoes. Some part of me expecting my mother to barge back in, to beg for forgiveness, or at least to start a new campaign of guilt. But nothing came. No new emails. No calls from relatives. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I rebuilt. I started therapy. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to examine the patterns I had normalized for so long. The guilt, the emotional manipulation, the endless striving to be good so someone else could feel in control. My therapist said something in our second session that hit me like a punch to the chest. Sometimes being a good son means refusing to be a broken man. That line stuck with me, because for years, I thought love meant obedience. That if I just tried hard enough, said the right things, dated the right people, lived the right kind of life, I could keep the peace. But peace built on silence is a lie. And love, the kind that truly lasts, doesn't demand your submission. It requires your honesty. With Emily, that's what I finally found. Not perfection, not drama, just space to be myself. And be loved not despite that, but because of it. I still miss the version of my mom I thought was real. The woman who tucked me in as a child, who brought soup when I was sick, who laughed when we danced around the kitchen. But I've come to understand that love isn't just what someone gives you when you're a kid. It's how they treat your heart when you're grown. And when someone turns your heart into a battlefield, it's okay to walk away from the war. So, if you're listening to this, and you've ever felt like someone you love is slowly erasing who you are, you're not alone. And it's not your fault. Sometimes, the hardest love to let go of is the one you thought you needed to survive. But here's my question to you. If your own parent tried to destroy the one person who made you feel truly safe, would you fight for your relationship? Or would you stay loyal to the one who raised you, even if it meant losing yourself?